Hi everyone, we're going to go over a glazing technique today, and it's an inlay technique, and like the name suggests, we're going to put glaze in, we're going to lay it in this case, a name that's stamped. You could have it so that your piece might have been just textured with a stamp that you used, like we made the tea bowls, or you might have carved something into your piece by hand, and you could do an inlay on that. I happen to have these mugs that I'm doing, and I want to have this name pop. So of course I want to think about the inlay. And in this technique, you want to think of a contrast for the clay body that you have. In this case, I'm using white clay. So what contrasts with white? Well, almost everything. But I really want it to pop. So I'm going to use a black glaze. And I'm going to apply it to the name directly so that it has that pop of color. Now I have one done already, and the first thing you want to do is glaze the inside so that when you're touching it, you're done, and the inside is done so that when you have the outside done, you're not touching it so that you have to do the inside, is what I'm meaning to say. So this is an inlay that I just did a little bit ago, and I put the black on. I took a clean sponge and wiped off the surface after I did the inside. So for the inside on this one, let's see, I'm gonna do this lavender as well. So make sure you shake or stir your glazes really well. If you have enough glaze to do this with, to pour in this case I do. I just started using this lavender. I really like the way it looks. It's got a nice high gloss, and you can see the textile on the front of it, how it would look on something that is stamped. So this is pretty too, but we're using the black. So I'm just going to pour it in. How much? Well, enough so that as you turn it, and I'm doing this right over the bottle, as you turn it, you should be coating everything with one really good coat. And it's getting in there. Let me face the camera a little better. I want to make sure I move it around, and always keep the extra out. You do not want glaze to puddle in the bottom of your piece, because if it does, you can end up with serious cracks or crawling that's going to happen. And sometimes with pouring, if I don't pour enough out, I've had crawling happen. So I'm usually, if I'm using brushing glaze, in the habit, if I can, if the opening is wide enough, like in a situation of a mug, I will do it. But for the sake of time for this video, I'm pouring. So I do have some pieces that have skinny openings where getting a brush in is completely impossible. And we did actually pinch pot vases this year, and a lot of my students had the opportunity to see what it was to pour in the glaze and just kind of be patient, waiting for it to come back out, because it can be pretty thick. Our brush on glazes can be. Okay, so the inside is done. So now I'm ready to take my black and place it over the lettering to get that to show off. Now I could, after the inlay, the one that I already have set, I could put clear. I could just use a glaze that I know will show through, so I have to make that decision. I haven't gotten that far yet. All right, so I've got black. I need a brush that makes sense for the job. And let's see, I'm gonna use a fluffy brush. It'll hold a lot of glaze, because all I want to do is I want to make sure that I pat and I push it all into the stamping. So this I'm going to hold on the side now. And I'm going to make sure that the black goes in every recess of the stamp. If I don't, what's going to happen, you're going to see a void. It's going to be like your pen skipped. So obviously I'm getting it beyond the lettering, and I'm only going to do this once. There's no need to put 2 coats on, just one, and I'm going to let it dry. Okay, so I'm going to have that ready. And it's drying very fast because the 1 coat on the bisqueware, and make sure your piece is bisqueware. I don't think I can say this enough. You want to make sure that you hear it has that ringing sound, and it's not giving me much of a ring because it's glazed a little bit. You want to make sure that if you scratch it, that it's not coming off like dirt, or that it's not carvable, because if that's happening, your piece is not fired. You're better off asking to be sure, because you don't want to ruin a piece by glazing it when it's not even fired yet. In the greenware stage, we don't glaze. We glaze in the bisqueware stage. Bisque is first firing. So, all right. And already you can see it's starting to get chalky looking. It goes from a black look to a chalky look. The lettering, though, is still wet, so I'm going to give that another moment or two. Go back to my other mug. Make sure it's clean on. I want to make sure that when I do glaze the rest of this, that there's no residue of black glaze that's going to interrupt. So I'm just going to clean that up. Always, before you do glaze, and I did that before I was on camera, you want to wipe down your bisqueware with a clean, damp sponge. Just damp. In the process of firing and then sometimes waiting for you to glaze it, it will get dusty. And you don't want that dust to act like a resist to the glaze. So just make sure you do a once over. All right. So now we're ready. In this short time, I've got my clean, damp sponge. Oh, I got a mark there I got to get rid of. Good to see that with the camera. Okay, now I've got a clean, damp sponge. I want to make sure that I squeeze it with all my might, so any little drops come out. I don't want the water to end up puddling in with the black glaze, because it'll take away from the look. It'll water down the glaze, and I do not want that. So this is a really great way to personalize a gift for somebody, putting their name on it, or even just their initials. And Inlay further kind of shows off that design and their name. In this case, I've got a really cute stamp with a really nice font. And I have similar ones like this that you use in class too. And a lot of times students aren't sure really what they want to do. It takes time to think of these things, to think of, well, how am I going to design it? Am I going to put a name that's so permanent? But yeah. And you see, the name is starting to pop in a really cool way. Really cute. And I am going to have a little bit of a black haze here and there, but that's okay. I'm going to do my best to wipe in between, making sure not to get water in there. And this is what I've got. And I've got a little dragonfly stamp. That's kind of my signature icon. I made the stamp, and actually that's right here. And a lot of times I stamp my pieces with this. It's my drawing, it's my carving, so I don't have to worry about taking it. Some of my bigger pieces, I use this stamp, this dragonfly stamp. And it's just, again, just something personal from me. And that's that. That's inlay. Now I need to decide, am I going to use clear? Am I going to go over it with a color? The black should show through almost everything. Of course, I'm not going to glaze as black, because then my name is going to disappear. And that's inlay.